Okay, so fungus is eating your house alive. What do you do now? Preventative measures is control the moisture. This is a picture of a downspout connected to a pipe, connected to what appears to be a French drain, which is going to divert water away from the house. There are so many houses that, if they have gutters, they're just dumping next to the house. And what's going to happen over time is it's going to erode the soil around the house and create a low spot all the way around the house. So your house is going to be sitting in a hole after a certain number of years. All the water is going to go under the house. The moisture level under your house is going to be elevated, inviting powder post beetles, termites, and fungus to come eat everything. Getting all of that water that accumulates on the roof, accumulates in the gutters, and piping it as far away from your house as possible is going to do a lot for long-term moisture management. Underneath your house, you should have adequate ventilation. Vents at the corners, vents providing cross ventilation. In other words, on one side of the house there's a vent and it's lined up with another vent so that when the wind's blowing, it's blowing directly through those vents and pushing all the moisture out. If you find a piece of fungal infected wood, it's okay to just cut out the bad part and splice it back together. If you have like joists or something like that that are rotten, or studs or something like that, it's okay to cut out the bad part, get rid of that, and sister something back in. Okay? Just remember though, ask yourself the question, why did this happen in the first place? Okay? It didn't just magically appear out of nowhere. There was some sort of condition that caused this to happen. Okay? So remove the affected wood, think about why this happened. Why is the moisture elevated at this site? Or it's just going to happen again. Borax is derived from boric acid, and it's so I'll say quote unquote natural product, even though it's got this red skull and crossbones on the side that means don't drink it. But you can spray this on affected material. Okay, this is also really good for like powder post beetles, but this can act as a preventative measure if you're concerned about fungal attack. But again, the biggest thing is controlling the moisture. All right, this is a video, kind of an alarmist video about dry rot. I'll remind you again, fungal attack that's occurring in a house. You can watch this. It's very scary. It's so gross. I hate dry rot. Okay, termites. Termites are the face of, wood destroying organisms, wood decay, even though everyone calls everything dry rot anyway. Termites, they're insects, they live in colonies. There's all sorts of termite species. Not all of them eat wood. Okay. The interesting thing about them, I guess, is there's a little bacteria that lives in their tiny little termite guts that actually digests the cellulose. Okay. So I'm going to read this fact off the PowerPoint because I think it's interesting. So across the United States, there's an average of 13 colonies per acre, 13 termite colonies per acre, and there's 1 million termites per colony. There are termites everywhere, waiting to eat everything. Telltale signs of termites are these little dirt tubes. Okay, they construct these little tunnels out of dirt and saliva and wood products, and they climb up concrete. They can climb up pieces of wood that they don't like to get to the sweet stuff. Termites are kind of fragile. They don't like sunlight. They get dried out real quick. They're kind of like wood vampires. They like it to be dark and damp. Okay? They need some sort of moisture. And there's two different kinds of termites. We'll talk about them, but depending on what kind of termite you have, they get their moisture in different ways, but they need moisture. Okay? They prefer the sapwood. Okay? I have seen them eat heartwood. old growth redwood, heartwood. I've seen them eat it, but they don't prefer it. Okay, they generally avoid pressure treated lumber. They avoid redwood. They avoid cedar. They'll eventually get to the pressure treated lumber because eventually that chemical that poisoned the food wears off. Okay. All right. Two main types of termites that I want to talk about here pretty soon: dampwood termites and subterranean termites. Dampwood termites, if there's a good termite, these are the good termites because they're the easiest to deal with. They need to have moisture directly at the site. Okay, they need to have a leaky gutter leaking on something. They need to have a leaky window soaking up the wood, okay, or leaky plumbing or something like that. They nest directly in the infected area, okay? They're big. They fly around. Okay, if you've seen termites flying around, those are the dampwood termites. As soon as you go in and fix the leak, cut out the rotten wood that they're nesting in, they're done. They have to go away. Okay, go find something else, you lazy termites. Okay. These are the easiest ones to deal with. They're the most visible also. Okay, they'll be on the outside of the house, flying around, eating stuff, crawling all over stuff. It's pretty apparent when these guys are around. Okay, and they're fairly easy to deal with. Subterranean termites, these are the ones that keep me up at night. These are the nightmare-inducing termites. They live underground in nests, and they don't need moisture. They don't need a leaky pipe directly leaking on a piece of wood. They live underground. They can get their moisture underground, take moisture up to whatever they're eating that day, and use that moisture to help digest the wood. They're the ones that construct those little tubes, and they're hard to see. They're kind of hard to see, and a lot of times you can have a pretty nasty termite infection and not even know about it. Okay. If you look closely at this picture, I think that's a termite right there. You can see a termite, but this is kind of a telltale sign. They'll eat through, see all these rings on the piece of wood? They'll eat through the soft, sugary, early wood, I think is what they call this stuff. The part of the tree that grew really fast, and they'll leave behind these darker, slow growth rings. Okay, it's apparent when you come across this. And there's all this little dust and stuff here. This is all the termite poop and leftover stuff that they leave behind. If you go in there and break that open, you'll find, well, what you're looking for, you're hoping that this happened a long time ago and the termites are gone now, but if you break this open and you see all these tiny little white ants crawling around, you got a termite problem. You got a subterranean termite problem, and it's not just a question of, oh, I'm going to replace that piece of wood. You have to treat it chemically, okay? You can break the rotten wood out and put something else back in, but they're invested in your house now, okay? You need to call a pest control business and have them chemically spray. And this is what it looks like. They're going to go around the perimeter and drill I think it's like every 12 inches, and pump the ground full of poison. And that's what's going to kill the termites, okay? But obviously, we don't want to do this. So before this happens, things you can do: eliminate moisture problems. Moisture problems on the house are an invitation to termites to come into the house. Remove the cellulose debris from underneath and around the house. It's very common, and you should just do this. When you buy a house, you get a pest report, and a pest service will crawl around the house and look at different things and find like fungus and, maybe find some problems. But every single pest report I've ever looked at has an action item that says remove cellulose debris from underneath and around house. That's all of the little pieces of wood that are laying under the house, scattered around the house. And those are just invitations to a termite party. You want to pick all those up. If they're just sitting on the ground, termites are going to find that, and then they're going to start eating that, and then they're going to look for something better once that's gone. So one of the fun things that you can do is crawl around under your house with a rake and a garbage bag and rake up all of the cellulose debris that's around the house, under the house, and around the house, and get it out of there. Any place that you have earth to wood contact, that's another key term in the pest control business. A piece of wood that's contacting the earth. Again, that's an invitation. The termites can eat right into that, and then they're into the rest of the house. It should be sitting on a piece of concrete, okay? Even so, look for those little dirt tubes on pieces of concrete. They can construct those little dirt tubes and traverse the concrete and get into pieces of wood, okay? For damp wood termites, again, it's easy to deal with. There's a rotten piece of wood, a soaking wet piece of wood that they're eating. You cut that out, replace it, kick the termites out, and they're gone. Subterranean termites, you have to do this. There's no way around it. You have to chemically treat the area, or they're just going to come back. All right, here's a picture, well, a little video. I can play this while I talk about it. This is so gross and scary. So it looks kind of normal, right? But then this guy just starts like, tearing apart all the wood. Just crumpling it. The poor wood's gone. That's the rim joist right there, in between some floor joists. And that floor joist looks kind of normal, right? It looks like it's not terribly bad, except for that rotten part. Okay, so that rim joist is totally gone. That black you're seeing out there is probably the felt paper. I don't need to watch scary movies. I just watch this. Okay. Here we go into the horrible part. Look at this poor floor joist. No! Okay, so unchecked, this is what can happen to your house. These tiny little bugs can eat it all up. And then, what's holding this house up, is my question. Okay, this thing's shot. Okay, you can watch the rest of that if you want. Powder post beetles. When you see a piece of wood with a bunch of tiny holes in it, that's evidence that powder post beetles have been there. Okay? The mom and dad powder post beetle get married, move into a piece of wood, have a bunch of babies, and then the babies, as they develop, eat their way out of the wood. And those little holes are the babies chewing their way out of the wood and leaving. And then what happens? They come back, they get married, move into the piece of wood, have a bunch of babies, and eat their way out of the wood. This is a pretty, in addition to the tiny little holes, this is another kind of telltale sign of powder post beetles. It looks a little different than termite damage. Okay, the powder post beetles is very, very much on the surface for the most part, at least initially. They'll eat their way through the whole thing. But they really like starchy cellulose. That's their favorite thing to eat. This is a good picture, these tiny little holes where the bugs have emerged. And this is a picture. You'll see this little dust. A lot of times that'll be the first thing you'll see. Like, what is this dust on the ground? Or I even I have it in a piece of furniture at my house. I have powder post beetles living in it. I think I treated it. I think I got rid of them. But noticing this dust. This dust is called frass. Remember that for your next Scrabble game. But they leave this dust behind. And then you start looking closer, and then you'll see all these tiny little holes where they've popped out. And I've been under houses, and I don't know, I haven't looked into the mind of the powder post beetles, and I don't know why they do this, but I've been under houses before, and there will be one joist that they prefer out of the entire house. Everything else will be fine, and there will be one that they've been eating on for 30 years and they didn't want to like go anywhere else. Okay, which is kind of nice. Then you can come in, cut that section out, get rid of it, put something else in, address whatever moisture problem invited these powder post beetles in the first place, and hopefully you won't have a problem again. Again, they like high moisture content. Okay. Dealing with these bugs, the first thing to do is control moisture with everything. Control moisture. Provide adequate ventilation. Generally, if you remove the infested wood, Sawzall, a rotten or powder post beetle infested wood out and sister something back on, that'll generally take care of the problem. Okay, but I've also been in places that every single piece of wood is covered in tiny little powder post beetle holes. Depending on the level of infestation, it might still be okay. It might still be structurally sound. In the initial stages, you can treat it with borates, borax, boric acid based products. And it could be, the biggest one is Timbor. I think that's kind of the most common one. And it's a powder, I believe, and you mix it up with some water and you put it in one of these little pump sprayers and you just go around and you totally saturate all of the wood. So if you buy a house, or if you notice on your house, all these tiny little powder post beetle holes everywhere, you can mix up some Timbor, crawl around, and spray everything, totally saturate everything, and that'll kill the powder post beetles. You might need to come back and check on it and see if they've come back, okay? But it's not necessarily wait for them to eat the entire house. You can treat it, okay? One way that people invite powder post beetles into their house is stacking firewood up against the house. They are present in firewood. You bring that firewood back to the house, stack it up against the house gets warm, the powder post beetles get tired of living out in that cold firewood pile, and they move into the warm house. This is a video that you can watch, one of the many borate products, and it's just somebody demonstrating treating a fence with some borate product. Okay, so to wrap this all up, there are 4 things that need to be present in order for wood decay to occur. A certain moisture level. We need to have oxygen present. There needs to be an acceptable temperature, and there needs to be a food source. If we can control one of those 4 things, we can stop wood decay from occurring. All we need to do is control one of them, okay? The easiest thing for us to do is stop excessive moisture conditions. Stop plumbing leaks. See if your windows are leaking. Make sure your gutters are directing water away from the house. Provide adequate ventilation underneath the house. We always want to prevent earth to wood contact. If you see earth to wood contact around your house, stop it. Okay? Don't let wood sit in the dirt. If it's going to be near the dirt, use pressure treated lumber or old growth redwood or cedar, a naturally decay resistant wood. Don't stack your firewood against the house. Okay? Depending on the level of infestation, you may need to chemically treat. Okay? If you have subterranean termites, there's no way around it. Just pay the $1,000 or whatever it is and have somebody come out and spray. At the same time, correct whatever conditions were in place to create that problem initially. Okay, thanks everybody. Hope you enjoyed this. Email me with any questions.